I'm out here in Miami. It is hot, it is humid, the sun is shining, but I tell you what, I'm about to be driving something really pretty epic. In fact, something that for a Brit this far away from home in this kind of climate is probably not the most suited. But today we are here with the McLaren Elva. This is one of 149 of McLaren's Ultimate Series cars, following the likes of the P1, the Senna, the Speedtail, and we know the P1's successor is coming in the future. The Elva is named after McLaren's chassis supplier for the race cars back in the 1960s. This particular one is a stunning specification with some stories behind the number 5 that's on the side. We'll be talking more about that. It's one equipped with a windshield, which means it can be driven here in the United States, and today I'm going to take it for a little drive and bring you along with me. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello, and welcome back to the channel. Let's check it out, the McLaren Elva. I must confess that driving a completely opened car in the middle of summer here in Florida, as a Brit, is going to be quite intense, but we're here and this is going to be spectacular. Let's start with an introduction though. What is it? The one of 149 of McLaren's Ultimate Series Hypercar, the complete Barchetta. It followed some greats that we'll touch on in a second, but this particular car, which we need to explore, has a couple of things to mention. The specification, we're going to take a full look at. The windshield, which if you're not familiar with, is an interesting option, especially here in the United States, and the number 5 that's worn on the side, and the story behind that, which is really quite unique. So the Elva was originally planned to be 399 cars. Due to exclusivity and demand, it was lowered to be one of 149, making it one of the rarest McLarens that they've introduced. It followed the P1, a decade old now. It's crazy how time flies. The car that really put McLaren on the map, and soon we'll be seeing the successor to that car coming in the form of the codenamed P18. Then we had the Senna, one of which I used to own, one of 500 cars, much more track focused, before the Speedtail, linking back to the old F1, the 3-seater configuration with a central driver's seat and a hybrid powertrain. This goes back to the V8. In fact, back here is a 4-litre bi-turbo V8, total of 815 horsepower, only 800 newton-meters of torque, rear-driven through the 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, but it's about the open experience. Now, normally, an Elva would have on the front the AAMS, the Active Air Management System, which rises up to effectively deflect the air away from the cabin. But here in the United States, to have them homologated, to be able to drive the car without having a special permit for it, there was an option that was then introduced to add a fixed windshield. Now you might be thinking, well, that's a little bit like the 765 LT, and given the car does share quite a lot in common with the Senna, with the 720S, 765 LT, and the more recently introduced 750S, it's actually quite radically different because there isn't a folding roof here. It's a windshield which has an incredibly clean design, curved carbon fiber frame surrounding it and fitting very well, giving us a view into this interior. And I mean, let's talk about this for a moment. The dual tone navy blue of the leather, the details, the stitching and the embroidery, and all of the blue carbon fiber that you can see around, the footwells, the steering wheel, the areas behind the seats. It's these kinds of details which set this car so far apart from anything else. It's painted in what's called Gotham blue. And in fact, if we come around towards the front where the sun is actually hitting it right now, you can see some of the metallic blue sparkle bouncing off it, which looks incredible. The number 5. Let me explain the number 5. This links back to Bruce McLaren in 1968. Number 5 was the number worn on his car at the Belgium Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps. Bruce McLaren won that Grand Prix in his own car, something that has not been replicated since. The only person to win a Formula 1 Grand Prix race in a car wearing his own name, which is really quite an amazing story. If I open up the door though, because in a moment I will be stepping in, of course you have the drama of this as well. You have the Bruce McLaren logo on the side sills. In fact, the foot also has the accelerator pedal with a pretty amazing graphic on it also. There's some storage underneath the tonneau covers. These open up, where you also have the helmet tucked in there as well. And in fact, I actually have the key to this right here, so I can pop this open to show you inside. Press and hold to open up the tonneau cover, and then inside here you'll see firstly the view through, just looks amazing, and then you can stow away the helmet in the very middle of it also. There's also a signature right here I'm going to point out from Daniel Ricciardo, at the time Formula 1 driver with McLaren. If I pull this out though, grab this helmet inside the bag just here, because I'd like to show you this, because the details on this are really nice. Check this out, matching the car, blue exposed carbon fiber, the Elva graphic on the side, the number 5 as well to go with it all. This is really, really nice. And of course you could wear those when you're driving, especially if you're in one of the cars that doesn't have the luxury of the windshield. And of course you can close that back up as well and get back on your merry way. So I guess in a second I should probably step in, get this started, and go out and drive. I'm going to swing in here. The button for the door is actually just on the inside, as you saw earlier. We're in the design district at the moment. It is very busy. We've got Louis Vuitton just opposite. We've got Hermes right alongside us. And I am now inside the McLaren Elva. So foot on the brake. The start button is right here. That sounds amazing. Obviously, right behind me back there. I can feel the vibrations through the tub, the blue carbon that just finishes it off. Close the door down by pulling right here on the air conditioning vent, and in fact, with this system now operational, I definitely want some of this AC blasting. Quick cool, please, as fast as possible. Before we're going to take this out, let me get comfortable, but I love this blue carbon. The details inside here are really quite fantastic, and the view with this very small windshield in front, that's the thing that's quite interesting. It's a very long way away from you and sits really quite small over the front of the car. That scuttle, which in famous McLaren fashion you can see so much of, with the controls up here as well for your powertrain and your handling. But yeah, the roads beckon, so let's do this. So let's head on out in the McLaren Elva. Right, McLaren Elva time. So, a bit familiar with the car. I have been lucky to drive them before. Here we are. Let's head out then from the Miami Design District in this thing. A big thank you to the team here for their help. This is quite an amazing place to be. We go straight past the Miami police car, so let's not do anything too silly at first. Just taking my time, getting my bearings. Here we are. This is it. Elva time. How often do you get to do something like this? Here in Miami, in a car like this. I mean, it's Miami, isn't it? 911s just cruise by, and I tell you what, roof up, because on a day as hot as this, that is, I'm going to say, the smart thing to do. So I was going to pull in where this UPS truck is currently blocking the driveway, but we will wait here then instead until he is out of the way in a moment. On the dashboard, it currently says it's 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, obviously I normally run in Celsius, but 102F is hot. Very, very, very hot. But here we are released. And I tell you what, even in just normal comfort base settings as I have the car at the moment, I am amazed by how responsive it is. Like a tiny press on the throttle pedal and it immediately just wants to bark and jump and get moving. And I guess that fits the character of the car, right? Because this is supposed to be the most extreme McLaren road experience. It's that kind of thing. Like, it's not obviously, I mean, it is actually savagely fast on the track. I was going to say it's not built for the track, but the thing is, every McLaren, it's something they always do really well. The steering feel, the carbon monocoques for stiffness, the lightweight components, the F1 derived technology like brake steer for torque vectoring, and all that kind of stuff always makes every McLaren you drive amazing out on circuit. And you feel, I certainly feel, very much at home just hopping straight in here. It's all very familiar. The steering wheel, I love these small grip McLaren steering wheels. The shift paddles are mounted to the back. You've got the rocker paddles so you can go up and down from either side. Obviously we've got the powertrain settings, so a press of here puts it through the different settings. We're in comfort at the moment. That will put it up into sport on the powertrain. The white screen is quite different from the previous models, but I guess with a little bit more sunshine coming in, you kind of want to have an easier to read screen. I really like as well how the painted color comes through the shoulders on the doors and the arches. The shape of the arches out here is just really cool to look at. But we're going to go and head over the causeway towards South Beach. That's the plan, at least, to get out of the traffic that we have around here in the design district and go for a cruise in here. Now, this is a cool place to be. The view around us, some of the skyscrapers to the right, as we're going to head across the causeway here. Miami's racetrack, very much straight line, but it's a straight line from here over towards South Beach. And having spent so much time out here in Miami in recent years, I feel like I know this place quite well. Obviously, with no roof, it does get pretty windy in here. But look at this, look at where we are. You can't help but smile driving in this thing. I mean, look at this view, actually. There's something quite surreal about Miami. This playground in the south of the United States. Tell you what, let's just manual drop a few gears for a second. I don't know how much of the engine you hear, Oh, the shift crack. That was cool. That was just 4th to 5th at fairly low RPMs. And even down the gears as well. Camera phones come out everywhere. I feel like you're not hiding if you're in a car like this, are you? Oh, those downshift cracks are really cool. I like that sound a lot. Oh, this is very, very cool to be here in an Elva. And I do personally prefer the cars with the windshield. To me, the difference by having a windshield is that you don't need to wear the helmet or feel like you're getting absolutely battered. If you're driving at 55 miles an hour without the windshield and without a helmet, it's intense. That's about as fast as you're kind of comfortable going, to be honest. Whereas in here, this is just so cool. This is just so cool right now. Get another pop out of it. The houses on the water with the boats outside. Gotta say, that would be the life, wouldn't it? Driving in Miami with an Elva, it's quite funny because Brits actually love convertibles. A lot of people in the United Kingdom buy open top cars, convertible cars, roadsters, even though our weather is famously pretty bad, because when we have a good day, we really appreciate that day. If it's a day like today, it's actually, I'm going to say, too much for something like this, certainly on a regular basis. Obviously, we're doing this, let's say, as a one-off, so it's a little bit different. It's a very familiar soundtrack, the rumble of the V8, very familiar for me. And this car is fairly new, I should also point out. It's not done a whole lot of miles, so we've got to be a little bit ginger with it. I have a confession to make from actually back when the Elva was originally introduced. And as an owner of a Senna, of course, I was lucky to hear about this car before it was released to the public. I was actually out here in Florida at the time. I remember it quite well. And I heard at the time 399 cars and also the price tag. And in Great British pounds, the original launch price of this was near enough, within a single-digit percentage, double that of the Senna for, technically, you could argue, less car, right? There's no roof, there's no crazy aero going on. There are other things, obviously, that we'll discuss. But I remember thinking, whew, that's quite a big ticket thing for what it is. Obviously, fast forward and the number reduced to 249 and then later down to 149 cars, introducing the exclusivity element for 2/3 of the price of what the Speedtail eventually became with 106 cars. What actually really started getting my interest up a little bit more with the Elva was when they added the windshield, because the car without the windshield has such limitations as to its use, right? You can't really just go and drive it in so many circumstances as you can with this. I mean, even in here, it's a pretty intense experience overall. But if you have no windshield whatsoever, you need helmets, you need to really be thinking, hey, I'm driving the Elva today. So fast forward, and I've got to say, this is now my 3rd time that I've been lucky to drive one of these. It's actually really coming together for me. I mean, at the moment we're just cruising, but obviously from here I can press manual. You can put it up into race mode as well. Go back down through the gears. Those noises. Oh my days, it comes to life. Obviously everybody's going to stop and check it out. Oh, it pops and bangs like you wouldn't believe. I just like the design of it. I like driving McLarens. They make cars that are just all around so good to drive. Every model, whether it's Artura or 750S or my 675 LT Spider, which I always say is a permanent member in my garage. And this feels quite like the LT. Everything is super dialed in, steering, pedals, the feel of the car. The ride, I mean, we're on some smooth tarmac, so it doesn't matter, but you can obviously turn that up and it adjusts the hydraulic suspension. Into sport, it will get a little bit firmer. But when your foot's on the throttle, it's ballistically fast, even if you're just using a small fraction of the power that the car offers. I just wish we had some nice twisty roads to go and drive. Somewhere in Tennessee right about now would be amazing. Through the trees, maybe a little bit later in the year when we've got the foliage and everything's looking very orange. Here in Miami, obviously the roads are pretty straight, what can I say? There's not a whole lot of choice we have in that regard. We just kind of got to roll with it and have some fun with it, enjoy the views and the scenery across the water. And what the Elva offers. And you know, I've got to say thank you to the owner of the car for the opportunity to drive it today. Part of an amazing collection, some lovely, lovely things. Lots more coming in the future as well that, hey, you never know, maybe we'll see something with also. But today, to just drive this and you feel the rawness of it, you get some of the vibrations and senses transmitting from the engine through the whole car, because that's how it's set up, right? It's not about a boatload of sound deadening, it's about something which gives you a rewarding feeling to go out and drive, something that is super exciting. I gotta say, from this short little drive, this thing is insane to drive. We're currently cruising back through Design District. This is where you would spot cars like this and cars like the G-Wagons. There are so many G-Wagons around. It's a nice navy blue. This whole place has been transformed massively in recent years, actually. Even from the first time I came here, it's all growing and growing and growing, but lots of very nice shops around. Oh, a little bit of a breeze here is nice. There's some thunderstorms ahead though, which is definitely a bit of a concern. Looking up at that sky, it'll probably absolutely bucket down for a very short period of time. But yeah, we don't want to be outside in the car with no roof if that happens. Well, Miami has done what Miami does. It is now pouring with rain. We very quickly have parked in a garage, but yeah, quick hiatus from the video that we were filming right now to hide indoors. While we're waiting for it to stop raining outside, and remember here in Miami, it will downpour for about 30 minutes, and 30 minutes later, it will be completely dry. I want to show you this, because I had never seen it before, but every Elva comes supplied with one of these, a waterproof cover, along with also some seat covers and a steering wheel cover, and we have put this on as a bit of a demonstration of how it works. It leaves the rear half of the car open so that you don't have any heat issues. Obviously, if you've been running the engine, the last thing you want to do is cover up where the various airflow is going through it. But then, if it was outside and it was raining, it protects the interior. You start at the very front, so loop it under the splitter. You've got the McLaren logo to know exactly where to put it. Then come round to the sides, where you have the poppers that go around the mirror arms so that you can get that into position. And then you have these elastic stretchable clasps that attach in the side vent and also back here. So super easy. You basically just have that, which pops on, holds this in place, and it protects the interior of the car. Because of course, while it can withstand a little bit of light rainfall, you don't want it to be torrential tropical thunderstorms in Florida on the inside of the cabin. That would not work. So we put it on as a bit of a tester, because of course sometimes for privacy that's the way you might like to do it, and it's quite fun, and it was easier than I thought for a first time actually ever doing so. Anyway, we'll probably take it off now, because I think it's going to be time to head back on out. And we are removing this, which of course is nice and easy, just like that. Fold this away. Simple! And we're back, ready to get it started again. Then, it's pretty cozy in here with the helmet, and I think this should be able to tuck into that little space down there and close this down on top of it, hopefully. Soft close, nice, done. I gotta say, tons of nice cars here. Aston, Corvette over there, G63 had just driven past as well, Supra with horns on the top, as you do, loads more around here, and now this beautiful thing. Right, let me step in, let's get it started, and let's get ready to head out. Well, this is definitely not Elva weather. We've actually popped back upstairs just to check, because somebody said it had started raining again, and it very definitely has. It's no longer completely thunderstorming, but with raindrops falling on the ground, you don't really want to drive a basically nearly new McLaren Elva. So we've just kind of got to watch the world go by before we continue. Maybe this wasn't the right day. I said that it would rain for 30 minutes and half an hour later it would be dry, right? We could go and drive again. No, it's about 4 hours later. The car is still in the underground garage. It's still raining, it's insanely humid, but there are a few more things that I'd like to show you about this. It's just particularly frustrating when you have the opportunity to go and drive a car as magnificent as this Elva and the weather gets in the way. However, let's talk about it a little bit more than just how the cover works. Firstly, you might be wondering, given I'm not even going to drive it in the rain, why does it bother having windshield wipers? And the short story is that if you didn't have the windscreen, you wouldn't have any at all, but it still needs to be homologated. It still needs to be road legal, and to do so, if you have some glass, you have to be able to dry the raindrops off the glass, so it still has them. You'll notice they're painted in the silver, looking stunning, and in fact, matching with a few other components. Notice the door mirror arms in the same finish, also looking very nice against this dark blue paintwork. And then inside the car, the central tunnel has this piece here with the air conditioning vents, the start button, and the drive, neutral and reverse. And also on the doors, the air vent here and the door open button also finished in the same way to match. And that also acts as your grab handle to close the door down when you're sitting inside it. Not only that, behind the headrest, you also have the speaker grills. In fact, under the tonneau cover, I'm not sure if you spotted it earlier, you actually have the subs, the speakers back here too. If I pop that open, you can see how those look. Also nicely finished. Everything is carbon fiber, all of the bodywork, significantly lighter than any other McLaren model, obviously without having the roof in place itself. Now, one thing that's quite interesting about a car like this, right, is that normally if you step into a supercar, and in here you do actually have the door button release just on the inside, you're dodging some low roof line to try and get into it. This car actually has some pretty big side sills, but by not having a roof, it makes it very easy. You just kind of fall in, although I say that we do have some additional carpets in here, but you can kind of just let yourself sink down, fall on into it, and then you pull the door down from the side as well, and it has soft close if you close the doors quite gently. Inside here, it feels insane. The windscreen sits so much further away from you than in a regular convertible. We have pull, what do you call it, comfort entry, so you pull the lower stalk and it pulls that back to your previous setting and moves the whole cluster and bezel with it. So everything up here comes with the steering column, where you have all of the different buttons and controls, and of course a foot on the brake, a press of the button, and in the garage it sounds awesome. It sounds absolutely awesome. Loads of air conditioning coming from low, which means you do actually get blown nicely by it. And just the feeling inside, I guess I should probably show you a little bit more of all of this, but the feeling is amazing. It's a very snug cabin. You have a lot of your controls in the central display. This screen, which obviously has the different settings, so up here to go into sport, and you'll spot that changing down there on the right hand side, same on the left. If you want to put handling into sport, that will adjust the suspension and it changes down there. When you're in low light, the display is black like you see it now, and when you go outside it's in white. You've got the rev counter that runs across the top, some of your tyre and temperature information, trip and other screens that you can change over towards the left hand side, and in typical McLaren fashion, all very focused, very dialed in, exactly what you need to see. Over here is where you have an evolution of previous systems. Obviously we've got the climate control running in overdrive at the moment, but media, phone, navigation, audio, settings, and variable drift control not available because we would need to be in ESC dynamic. So you press that button and then you've got a series of different slide angles that you can go to when this is fully activated. Turn it on and this would allow us to drift the car, and it shows you on the screen obviously exactly how much drift. We're not going to be going to do that around the parking garage right now. An interesting thing for the United States is that you have the additional covers here, which are to do with the airbags. That's all standard out here as opposed to the European cars, which wouldn't have that in place. But you're kind of cocooned inside this thing, inside the car. We've got the racing harnesses currently tucked into that blue carbon behind the seats. Oh, well, somebody just definitely smacked the roof. That was dramatic. Welcome to Miami. That was quite loud and scary actually. Luckily all well. And of course, even just baby revs, it sounds amazing. Interestingly, it has a really low idle down there as well. Just baby revs. Down here, a couple of your controls, the auto stop start, the lock, opening the tonneau cover, but nothing really on the steering wheel. It's all reserved to the paddles that sit behind. Yeah, it feels cool being in here, but I tell you what, we should touch on what's next. P18, the successor to P1. You know, when the P1 launched over a decade ago, that's the thing that's crazy about this. It was 11.5 years ago. It was a pioneer. It was the next step of hypercar, right? It was the next category, the Holy Trinity, up against LaFerrari and the 918 Spider. Since then, McLaren formed this Ultimate Series, this lineup with the Senna, the Speedtail and the Elva, three completely different cars to where the P1 sat. One for the track, one for ultimate top speed, the fastest McLaren ever, and the 3-seat setup, one for the open barchetta driving experience. And the idea, I believe, with P18 is to break a little bit away from this Ultimate Series, but to create the next generation of pioneer of technology. Now, P1 already boasted 900 plus horsepower. I think the next gen is going to be well over 1,000. I've heard rumors of a new bespoke V8 engine being built for it. We'll of course expect a hybrid powertrain because you can use that electrical performance not just for the environmental benefits, that's a very nice side effect, but also for the extra early torque, for the extra power, for the ability to drive on eDrive as well. So lots coming in the future down the line. I haven't seen it myself yet. I'm very much looking forward to seeing it, but I think it's a natural progression for McLaren to launch that. It's been interesting having these different Ultimate Series cars, but fundamentally it's about the next big hypercar. If you look at Ferrari, for example, and the way they went from F40, F50, Enzo, LaFerrari to the codenamed F250, for McLaren it's kind of P1 onto P18, P2, whatever it ends up being, something else one. I don't know, maybe it will have a name. I think with the recent McLaren naming structure, look at Artura, look at Elva, etc., I wouldn't be surprised if we see a name or maybe another letter with the one as well. But this is something that sits in this very unique position. We've had this phase really after the SLR Stirling Moss of these open Barchetta cars, the likes of the Monza, the Elva, the V12 Speedster, and some others as well, like the guys at Bussing chopping the roof off the AMG GT to make the Speed Legend. These cars that are about emotion, linking back to old prototypes and open top racing, in the case of this, to the Can-Am cars, the 60s, McLaren's success, obviously this particular one with that nod, like I mentioned, to Bruce McLaren's win in 1968 in Belgium. But we're moving now into more of the next level of performance. But performance has gone absolutely bonkers with Valkyrie, with Jesko, with even the RB17 that launched recently. So where do things go from that? It's a really interesting era, a really interesting time, and I'm very excited to find out what McLaren introduced next after Elva when we're talking hypercars. It will be a larger number than the 149 of these, for sure. I think 400 cars is the number perhaps I would expect, but this is certainly something that the more time I've spent around it, the more times I've been lucky to drive it, the more I kind of understand what it's about and where it sits. I haven't really spoken much about the rear of the car. Obviously at the moment we have the wing down, this whole enormous panel at the back that we saw earlier sitting up in the aero position. You have exhaust tailpipes that shoot up, you have exhaust tailpipes that shoot back, and obviously the benefit of all of those is you get a ton of sounds, pops, V8 rumbles and noises going on behind you, especially with all of the coolant that comes in through the top. There's just a ton of sound, and sound is emotion, sound is fun. Elva is non-hybrid. This is going to be one of the last of this type of car, right? Everything going forward is going to have an electrical element in some form when it comes to a manufacturer like McLaren. And back here, there's just a ton going on. But it's all about airflow, it's about aerodynamics, it's about the diffuser, it's about making sure that it can have this crazy performance. And like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to McLaren models, while I think the outright ambition of this car wasn't to make the fastest thing in the world, the reality is it's astonishingly fast. I've been lucky to drive it on track. It is super, super quick, absolutely mind-blowing performance, because they've taken this familiar engine and powertrain setup, put it in something even lighter, and it absolutely blows anything else away. So I want to say a huge thanks to the owner of the car for the opportunity to drive it today. I would have loved the weather to be a little bit more on side to head back out. It is extraordinarily hot down here, as you can probably tell, but I think we should wrap it up for there. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, driving the McLaren Elva here in Miami. That's it for this time though. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Cheers! Well, a bonus, we're going for it outside. The sun is shining through at least. That's something. Could be worse, but unfortunately the car needs to be loaded up now, so we've got a gap in the weather to just bring it out for that. Oh well, it was still fun, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, some things, just a little bit outside of your control.